We are live.
Great, thank you. Thanks everyone and welcome. Welcome to our meeting number 26 of the Environmental Justice Council. And before we get started, if I could just have our colleagues at ERG provide some review of logistics and interpretation.
欢迎大家参加第26次环境正义委员会。
Interpreters, sorry, the interpretation rooms aren't open quite yet. We're going to get to that very, very soon. In fact, welcome everyone to the 26th Environmental Justice Council meeting. My name is Kessel and I'm with ERG, a contractor supporting this meeting. Before we get started, I have some interpretation logistics to go over. This presentation is available with virtual interpretation into Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Cape Verdean Creole, Vietnamese, Mandarin, and American Sign Language. Our interpreters will now go over this in their languages. Or Spanish, would you like to say that?
Para entrar en el canal de español, haga clic en Interpretación y seleccione Spanish. Gracias.
Thank you. Portuguese, please.
Para entrar no canal em português, clique no ícone Interpretation e selecione Português. Obrigada.
Thank you. Cape Verdean Creole, please.
Para participar na crioulo, clica na ícone Interpretation e seleciona Cape Verdean Creole. Obrigada.
Thank you. Haitian Creole, please.
Pour entrer dans channel créole haïtien, cliquez sur l'icône Interprétation et puis choisir Créole haïtien. Merci.
Thank you. Mandarin, please.
要以普通话参加会议，请登机口语图标并选择 Chinese.
Thank you. And Vietnamese, please.
Để vào kênh bằng tiếng Việt, hãy nhấp vào biểu tượng Interpretation và chọn Vietnamese. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to turn on the interpretation rooms. Okay. Everyone should have seen a little globe icon pop up in their Zoom control panel. Please click on this globe and select your preferred language. English speakers should select English so they can hear any translated comments. If you are using ASL, our ASL interpreters will be spotlighting themselves during this meeting. You should also be able to pin them to the top of your screen. If you don't see the interpretation icon, you can click on the More button indicated by 3 dots on the right side of your Zoom control panel. A little menu will pop up and it should be there. Closed captioning is auto-generated, and you can turn that on by clicking on the CC icon in your Zoom control panel. Attendees can send an email to meetings@erg.com with any technical questions relating to Zoom logistics. If you'd like a translated version of the presentation slides, you can go to the Environmental Justice Council website that will be in the chat shortly. You'll find the presentation there. This meeting is being recorded and will later be available for viewing on the website. Attendees can submit a question in the Q&A box. If you would like to make a verbal comment or question, we have time allotted during the public comment session. Please wait for this time to make comments. During the public comment session, please raise your hand and wait to be called on. If you're commenting in another language, please speak into your language channel and our interpreter will translate the comments into English. Or you may type a comment into the Q&A box and I will read it out loud. Please keep comments under 2 minutes to ensure everyone has the chance to speak. For all speakers today, please speak slowly to accommodate the interpreters. Please use simple language and minimize the use of acronyms. I would like to remind council members to only use the Zoom chat function for meeting logistics and for no other communication in accordance with open meeting law. We are also asking all virtual council members to leave their cameras on for the whole meeting. That is it for logistics. So I'm going to turn it back over to Maria Belen.
Thank you, Kessel. Can you all hear? Is the mic working? Yes? Okay. Thanks, Kessel. So now we'll go through the meeting agenda. But if there are any elected officials, local or state or federal, I'd like to invite them to introduce themselves. I don't think I see any. And now I will actually pass it back to Kessel for the roll call, to conduct the attendance roll call.
Thank you. So we'll do roll call for quorum. I'd like to remind everyone to respond verbally. Caroline Hahn. Cheryl Hawley.
Here.
Thank you. Harleen Marwa.
Here.
Jen Salonetti.
Here.
Lydia Lowe.
Here.
Madeline Fraser Cook. Marcos Luna. Melissa Ferretti.
Present.
Miles Gresham. Patricia Spence. Paula Garcia.
Here.
Peter Matthey.
Here.
Sophia Owen.
Here.
And Maria Belen Power.
Present.
All right, so we have 9 members, so we have quorum.
Great, thank you. So now I'd like to proceed to approve the minutes of the last meeting. That was April 9th, 2026, of meeting number 25. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? No? All right, so members can vote in favor, oppose, or abstain. Sophia, can you help me with the roll call?
Yes. Caroline Hahn. Cheryl Hawley.
In favor.
Harleen Marwa. Jen Salonetti.
Agreed.
Lydia Lowe.
Yes.
Madeline Fraser Cook. Marcos Luna. Melissa Harding Ferretti.
Yes, approved.
Miles Gresham. Patricia Spence. Paula Garcia.
Yes.
Peter Matthey.
4.
Sophia Owen.
Yes.
And Maria Belen Power.
Approve.
And with 9 approvals, the minutes are approved.
Thank you, Sophia. So now we'll go to the public comment section. So we have a public comment section in the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting, at the end of the agenda items. So I will, there's some logistics for participating in person and virtual. So Sophia can help us walk through the logistics.
Yes, thank you. For our attendees, if you're speaking in another language, virtually you can raise your hand, and once you're unmuted, you can speak into your language room. The interpreter will translate what you say into the English room. You can also submit written comments to the Q&A box, and we will read them aloud. Please keep your comments to 2 minutes. If you're in the room, we can either bring you a handheld mic, or you can go up to the podium to make a comment. Finally, I'd like to remind everyone to speak slowly for our interpreters and to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less so everyone has a chance to speak. Thank you.
I don't see any hands in person. Are there folks online?
Yes, we have Wig Zamore. You should be able to unmute yourself and speak.
Yes, hi. This is Wig Zamore from Somerville. Longtime activist in land use, transportation, environment, and health, and longtime environmental epidemiology leader. I would love to know who I can work with to bring about regulatory improvements with regard to transportation-related ultrafine particles and noise. The ultrafine particles are much more dangerous than fine particles, and we have absolutely no regulations. We've got 100 papers, including our first 5 doctorates in the National Library of Medicine. Some of our papers are very highly rated in the medical literature as well as just environmental health. So if anybody's able to connect me from the committee or anybody else with a path forward to regulatory protection, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Wig. We can put my email in the chat for Wig, or I can send you an email as well to follow up. Obviously, this is beyond EEA, but we can definitely talk through what are some of the mechanisms that would happen.
Great.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any other hands up, but there are a couple comments in the Q&A box I can read out loud.
That'd be great, thank you.
All right, David Dow said, last night I participated in a webinar on regenerative agriculture from a 15-acre site on Martha's Vineyard, where they proposed small local farms to produce and reduce climate change effects. This webinar was organized by Woods Hole Climate Research Center.
Thank you.
And that is all that is in the Q&A box right now.
Great. Yes, do you want to stand up? Is there a mic?
Yeah, would you prefer? Yes, we could also bring you a mic or go up to the podium. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarita Hudson. I'm Senior Director of Strategy and Development at the Public Health Institute of Western Massachusetts. I want to thank you for coming out to Western Massachusetts. It's wonderful to see the Office of Environmental Justice and Equity coming out and seeing what it looks like out here in Western Mass. And I love that you're at this beautiful place for Hitchcock Center. I want to call attention to a new resource that we have developed. Hitchcock Center is one of our partners. It's the AirWatch app that is part of the Healthy Air Network. You can visit healthyairnetwork.org to find out more, but we are leading a project with over 100 sensors in Massachusetts, collecting neighborhood level data and putting it through in this app that you can hold in your hand and get alerts. And it was developed through a community engaged process where we had a lot of support and comments and feedback and guidance from our community resident advisors. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarita. Thanks for coming out. Anyone else? All right, so now we are joined by my colleague, Undersecretary of Energy, Mike Judge, who will be presenting and talking through the executive order on energy supply. So Undersecretary Judge will give us an overview of the executive order, discuss some of the key objectives and highlights of the administration's efforts to strengthen and to bring energy to the Commonwealth. So I'll pass it to you, Undersecretary.
Great. And I have a couple slides here. You can go to the next one. So the Governor Healy issued this executive order in March 16th, I believe. And so if you go back one, I just wanted to kind of talk, the kind of centerpiece of the order is around expanding energy supply and diversifying our supply mix. So we've been dealing a lot with energy affordability issues. It's always been an issue. It has always been something that we focus on. But in the last year or two in particular, it's really, I think, come into the forefront on a lot of things. And so we see a lot of growing demand on the system, on the electric grid, and we have a lot of need for additional supply to meet that demand. And so the governor in the executive order is calling for an additional 10 gigawatts of new energy supply, 4 gigawatts of that from new solar resources in state, 3.5 gigawatts of that from demand response resources, so active demand management, passive demand management, just using our grid more efficiently and utilizing what we have better. And then another 2.5 gigawatts of other new resources, not necessarily specifying, but that could be onshore wind, utility scale, solar maybe outside of the state, it could be hydro, it could be any number of other types of resources. But altogether adding 10 gigawatts of new supply by 2035, as well as an additional 5 gigawatts of new energy storage to integrate that supply to reduce peak demand, to improve the optimization of the operation of the electric grid, and really just make the system more affordable and cheaper for everyone and cleaner for everyone. And so our analysis that we performed alongside this showed that by adding 10 gigawatts over the next 10 years, we could save approximately $10 billion in avoided costs for ratepayers. So if you go to the next slide, there's a number of other things. I'd say that's sort of that's the big ticket item from the executive order, but there's a lot of other things that are going on. So we have a number of active procurements underway in order to help achieve some of those energy supply objectives. So we have multi-state procurements that we're coordinating with other New England states around onshore wind and around clean energy more generally. We've actually recently procured some solar resources. Those contracts will be submitted to the Department of Public Utilities soon. We have procured 4 energy storage projects, 1,268 megawatts of energy storage capacity in an initial round of procurement, and those contracts are about to be submitted to the DPU as well. We have another round of energy storage procurements that is imminent. So we are trying to procure some of these larger resources and get more things online. We've also expanded our solar incentive programs with the SMART program, which is our flagship in-state solar program. That was launched last fall, and the DPU just approved a tariff which allows payments under that program to move forward just a few weeks ago. So a lot happening in that space, but still a lot more that we can do to expand solar deployment. So looking at things like flexible interconnection, which allows for solar facilities to come online faster and cheaper. Maybe they don't always operate at their full output, but then they don't have to pay for massive electric grid upgrades that may slow down or add cost to the project. So we're pursuing that with working with the utilities and the Department of Public Utilities and industry, trying to break down other barriers to solar deployment, looking at how to leverage demand side resources. So what that means is how do we help customers use less or reduce their contribution to peak demand, and by doing so, avoid building out unnecessary additional electric grid infrastructure, because that can be extremely costly. If we can avoid building new substations and new transmission lines, we can save everyone money, and that can be done through individual customer actions. Department of Energy Resources earlier this year issued a study that analyzed the potential for peak demand reduction, which informed the executive order and the target that was established in that executive order. We have a lot of work underway at the Department of Public Utilities right now around access to customer data, around deploying and utilizing advanced meters, around rate design and trying to create time-varying rate structures so that customers can have price signals and third-party entities can help customers extract value out of their own appliances, out of their thermostats, out of batteries and solar that's deployed, and then provide value to other customers. So a lot of focus on deploying solar and demand resources. And then increasing energy storage, that's related to that. There's sort of the very large utility scale, grid scale energy storage resources. We've seen a number of projects that are moving through the permitting process that have been awarded contracts. There are also the smaller scale, customer-owned battery storage that can participate in some of those demand management programs as well. Trying to get more wind online. In-state resources, we have some limited ability to get more land-based wind here, but there's a procurement to try to procure up to 1,200 megawatts of onshore wind up in northern Maine and bring associated transmission down with that. So that's underway. We have also been working with UMass Lowell around looking at the opportunities for advanced nuclear and fusion energy. So we have in Massachusetts Commonwealth Fusion, which is one of the world's leading fusion energy companies. They are scheduled to deploy their first fusion energy machine, a 400 megawatt facility in Northern Virginia in the early 2030s. So this is becoming more real that this could actually happen. And so trying to understand what's the potential for Massachusetts, what's the potential for New England. There's a lot of collaboration amongst all of the New England states. The 6 New England governors issued a statement earlier this year in support of exploring additional advanced nuclear resources. The technology's evolved quite a bit in these new small modular reactors. They're much smaller, much safer, and they're starting to be deployed. And so we have a report and a study that's underway in partnership with UMass Lowell. That'll be out this fall. We're really also looking at geothermal, and so the executive order directs a lot of work to be done in breaking down barriers to geothermal, looking at well driller certification. We're not a region that has historically done a lot of subsurface drilling, but there's a lot of lessons to be learned from other regions that have. And so we're trying to break down some of those regulatory barriers, examine new regulatory structures, ownership structures. Could the utilities own geothermal? The utilities have been deploying, Eversource deployed a network geothermal system in Framingham. There's opportunity for them to deploy more. We're talking to a lot of college campuses and other large campuses about possibilities of them owning geothermal. So there's a lot of benefits. When you deploy a geothermal system, it has a very, very high efficiency that it operates regardless of the outside temperature. And so it can bring down peak demand. It can reduce needed investment in the electric system. It can save everyone else money, in particular the person who adopts it. So really trying to find ways to deploy more of that. And then finding ways to get people connected faster. So I mentioned earlier that flexible interconnection. That not only applies to getting new generation facilities connected faster, but it also applies to getting new housing or other types of facilities that are consuming electricity online faster, and really trying to, in doing that, avoid unnecessary spending. There's a few things I think we'll be talking about: microgrids, talking about building resilience into the energy system, and breaking down barriers for microgrids. In the governor's affordability legislation, there's some provisions that would enable community-owned microgrids, and so trying to advance some of that. And then the last thing here is another piece that we are still very reliant on gas as a state, and we will be for some time. And we do have constraint issues in the wintertime that really drive up energy costs for everybody. When you have very cold periods in the winter, gas prices spike, generators switch over to fuel oil, and we burn something like 65 million gallons or barrels of fuel oil, in the span of just a few weeks this winter. And that wouldn't be necessary if we could find some ways to sort of better manage the constraints on our gas system. So trying to look at what do we do in this interim period. We're continuing to try to move forward on deploying more clean energy and electrifying homes and switching customers away from gas so that we're reducing demand on the gas system. But are there some targeted things that we could do in the interim? Maybe some additional gas storage where you are drawing from the gas system when gas prices are low, storing that so that you can dispatch it during those high price periods, avoid use of oil, avoid use of imported liquefied natural gas, because we're also very dependent on liquefied natural gas still, and that comes in through the Everett Marine Terminal. And we're trying to avoid reliance on that facility as well. So trying to think strategically about what can we do with our existing gas system to better manage some of those constraints and lower costs for customers, and hopefully lower emissions in the process as well. So that's sort of a summary of everything that's in there. There's a lot to the executive order. We are, it's multi-agency effort, a lot of coordination happening, trying to make sure that we achieve a lot of these things. A number of these things we can do on our own. A lot of it does require legislation to really drive things forward. So we're looking forward to the Senate taking up the energy affordability bill in the coming weeks and getting that enacted so that we can really unlock some of these possibilities.
Great. Thank you, Undersecretary. Yeah, we'll pause for questions from the council members, either in person or remote. Maybe we can take the slide down to see the council members that are online. Yeah, so any questions? Sophia.
Thank you, Judge. One, I guess maybe kind of basic question is just to the last point that you made around requiring legislation. Are all of the things that you discussed pieces of the energy bill, or is there additional?
No, not all of it. Some of it doesn't require legislation. Some of these things, it's just regulatory actions that agencies can take. Some of what's in the executive order too is also very specific and directive. Some of it's a little more broad. But there are provisions in the energy affordability bill around breaking down barriers to solar, flexible interconnection, some of the geothermal ownership structures that we're trying to pursue. That could really unlock some of the potential here. But a number of these things we can do without legislation. And so I think we're trying to move the ball forward on that, but also, do what we can without legislative authority too.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but could we have all the panelists get as close to the microphones as they can, just to make sure we can hear online? Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't really hear Sophia's question, but I mean, I think it's great that you want to reduce our dependence on gas and oil, but there's lots and lots of people in old houses that depend upon that.
Mhm.
They can't afford to switch.
Yep.
They can't use Mass Save because the houses are too old and too not updated enough. So is there a plan? Are you just gonna leave all those people behind, or is there a plan to bring those people with us, or?
Yeah, no, definitely not. I mean, I do think, Mass Save does have incentives for, we are trying to do deeper energy retrofits through Mass Save, and try to get at some of those older, harder to transition homes. But that's also part of the reason that we want to find ways to bring down the cost of gas. And I think, we're not talking about new greenfield, brand new pipelines coming into the region, but are there ways to expand capacity of an existing pipe? Or, as I said, if you could put a storage facility at a strategic location on the system, you can pull gas off of it when gas prices are low, and then put it back on when gas prices are high, and keep those costs down for everyone, because that affects gas prices and electric prices. It impacts both systems. I think very often people don't think of how related those systems are. The same gas distribution network that heats our buildings is the same gas distribution network that provides gas to power plants to electrify our buildings. So they're very interrelated to one another. And if you can reduce demand or constraints on one, then you can impact the other one as well. And so that's definitely part of our strategy of deploying geothermal. If you can get a few large campuses off of the gas network and switch to geothermal, that puts down pressure on all the prices and for every other customer that remains on the gas system too. So trying to think about it as on a system level.
Thank you.
Anyone online?
Secretary Judge, thanks very much for sharing this. Just out of curiosity, talk about strategically targeting those campuses to reduce the demand there. What are some of the barriers preventing? I'm sure there's transition costs, that sort of thing, that might be preventing them from transitioning over. But what might be some of the other less visible barriers that they might have to do that?
It's often, I would actually say it's generally sort of the physical constraints of the properties and the cost issue, upfront cost, right? They have a limited amount of money that they can invest in things, and retrofitting a whole building or a whole campus to be geothermal from gas or whatever it may be can be a pretty daunting challenge. So one of the things that we've proposed in the Governor's Energy Affordability Bill, which is getting a lot of traction with industry, with the utilities, and with other advocates, is to allow the gas companies to own geothermal wells that serve individual customers. Today, they can own if they're serving multiple customers and if they have a network system. But allowing, we've talked a lot with some of the universities in the Boston area. Tufts in particular has been a very good partner for us on this and helped because they were very interested in pursuing a geothermal system for their campus. And they have highlighted how much money they could save and how much avoided investment they could have if the utility were to own this. And so the idea is that the utility owns it, Tufts pays for it, no other customer is having to pay the utility for the fact that that system was deployed, but every other customer is benefiting because if Tufts is off the gas system, then they're not using that gas anymore. They're putting downward pressure on gas demand, and then they're putting downward pressure on prices for gas and electricity. And Tufts is also benefiting because they now have a system that they can pay back over the 50, 60-year life. Sometimes these geothermal wells, they can last up to 100 years, actually. So the utility can amortize that cost over decades and charge them a very low cost of service, and they benefit. Everyone benefits tremendously. So sort of a win for everybody. But it is changing the model a little bit because to date, utilities haven't been able to serve individual customers in that way. So that passed in the House, and we're now trying to get it into the Senate bill.
Thanks for that.
Harleen?
Thank you, and thank you so much for the presentation and for answering our questions. One question that I had is if you could talk a little bit more about how you're planning to, like what some of the metrics you're using to measure success of this implementation might be. One piece, like I know we've been talking a lot about kind of the economic impacts, but certainly there's health impacts to this. And so is that going to be something that is included in the overall measurement here?
Yeah, I think we're still developing some of the tracking metrics. I mean, there's the obvious of we've set gigawatt targets and we can track progress towards those. But I think beyond that, that's a good question. I think we're still sort of developing exactly how we would track that. We do have an internal tracking spreadsheet that we're making sure we're keeping up with progress on all the various elements of the executive order. But in terms of trying to demonstrate savings that are being realized as a result of it or avoided health impacts, we haven't quite gotten there yet, but that's definitely something that's on our list of things to do.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just another question.
Sure.
Going back to the geothermal for a second, but I guess in general as well, for a scenario like the one with Tufts, would that be? I mean, you were saying that like the utility would own it, but would it be a ratepayer proceeding to fund it?
It would be only the individual customer that would be paying the utility. So it would be kind of bespoke contracts or tariffs with the individual customers. So the idea that we have, and this would have to be kind of sorted out at the DPU, is the gas companies would come up with a proposal of here's how we're going to structure the cost recovery. And they've actually started doing this. Eversource has actually proposed a geothermal rate where they charge $1 per ton of capacity used. And so they could come up with a structure of this is how we would charge these customers that elect to participate in this, but they're not going to rate base that amongst the rest of the gas customers. So no other customer should pay for it. And it would only move forward if the individual customer found it to be advantageous. We're also having some discussions about the idea of packaging together groups of smaller customers, like residential scale. So companies like Dandelion Energy, they do individual residential geothermal. The idea is they could package together 20 customers and sell those projects to the utility. The utility would then take on those customers, but then the customer would have no upfront costs associated with drilling the well. They'd only have to pay for the heat pump. And so we're trying to explore and just be innovative here. I think there's still some details to be sorted out, but the legislation gives enough flexibility to figure that out. But the idea is that no other customer would be paying for another customer to make this switch.
That's reminding me of the example that you gave of in Framingham as a community project. So I actually attended that site visit and I'm trying to draw on that memory, but in that circumstance, there was a specific community, like a box, if you will, that had to opt in. And was that 100% opt in order for that to move forward?
There's a couple customers that did not, but most people did. In that instance, they were not retiring there was no gas service in that neighborhood. So they had customers that were oil or electric resistance. And so I think the math was pretty good for most of the people on that. And I think most people were interested in switching, but there were a couple customers that chose not to do that, but they were able to move forward anyway because they had enough of the customers there.
And there were resources provided for those, the infrastructure change on the home level.
The cost of that program is actually being recovered from all Eversource gas customers. And it was a pilot program to really show could this work. And if you were to do networked, they're trying to create like a new category of customer, geothermal customers. So if you see more networks like that get developed, they might all be lumped together, and you may not charge in the future. You may not charge gas customers for something like that. I think we're at the very early stages and haven't quite figured that out yet. But that's the direction I would expect it to head.
Lydia, did you have a question?
Yeah, what's interesting about this alternative.
Get closer to the mic.
Well, this alternative investment structure is interesting, but I'm wondering how would you then avoid a situation where the people and entities that get to take advantage of geothermal will be large institutions and wealthier neighborhoods?
So so the idea, we initially started this in I guess our initial language was just anyone can do it. And then the utilities were like, well, we don't want to be doing every individual residential home. That seems like a lot. That seems like kind of an aggressive place to start. And so then we said, and we also heard back from industry that they were a little bit worried about the utilities that kind of encroaching in their market. And so we set a minimum threshold of 1 megawatt of capacity, which is a pretty large commercial customer. And so the idea is start there. If you can get some of those large institutional customers off of the gas network, that can really provide a lot of benefits for everyone else. And then maybe you can expand out from there too. And maybe you could even do networked systems with them. I'll go back to the Tufts example for a minute. Tufts campus is sort of intertwined within Somerville, like in some neighborhoods. If they're running pipes down there, it would not be difficult for them to start connecting customers in the surrounding area potentially. So I think we're trying to just explore new regulatory pathways here and ownership models to see if this works, because the upfront costs and the fact that the customer has to bear 100% of it today has been a barrier. But we definitely don't. Yeah, I mean, we want to make sure there's equity as this is happening too. And that it's not just wealthier or institutional customers that are benefiting from this. But I think we see benefits for all customers if some of those bigger institutional customers go first. And I'll add one other thing that's just sort of related to this is there's this study that Mass CEC is working with the City of Boston and the Green Ribbon Commission on called the Bos 10 study. And it's examining the potential for using the Charles River, the Mystic, and Boston Harbor, and the ground below it, the riverbed and the ground below it, as a potential for geothermal that could be deployed in the greater Boston area and actually serve like the areas surrounding those water bodies or around next to those water bodies. So that could allow for some institutions to do this. That could allow for whole neighborhoods to potentially be converted. So we're testing the feasibility of that right now and seeing if that might be something that could work.
Thank you. Any last burning questions?
I'm just trying to think a little bit more about how this could be, where the opportunities are on in a home.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciating the larger thinking of it, but for example, you mentioned something about peak demand reduction, and I recently through Eversource had a smart meter thrusted upon me without any real information about how this could be so beneficial, and through a conversation with a friend started to understand more about those benefits. So I'm wondering I'm just curious about where the community opportunities are for learning, shared learning, and understanding of where these kind of opportunities are.
Yeah, we have some work to do in that space, but we are trying to do that. I think there's some pretty there are sort of technical proceedings going on at the DPU around data access protocols. Who can access that information to help customers unlock that potential? I think we're scratching the surface here. All customers should have a smart meter by the end of 2027. And so our goal is to start to have rate structures in place so that customers and these data access protocols in place so that customers can start really unlocking the benefits of that for themselves, but to help the entire grid as a whole. And so we're starting to develop some of those programs, but in other jurisdictions and other countries like the UK, they have third-party companies that come in and they're energy service companies, and they'll say, hey, you give us access to your data, we can help you manage this, we'll save you money, and then you'll be benefiting the grid as well. So trying to get some people, trying to innovate in that space, but do so in a way that's protective of customers. And actually there's some legislation that would allow the DPU to establish consumer protection standards for companies that are operating in that space as well. It's focused on solar companies, really, but it would also allow them to establish standards for anyone who's providing any kind of retail energy service to an end use customer.
Thank you.
And you said there's legislation like that.
Yeah, it's kind of let me think here. I'm pretty sure that the language that we worked on got into the House bill. I can point you to it. It's in the House Energy Bill. They have a whole section on solar consumer protection. And in addition to solar, though, it's about distributed energy resource providers. So the primary focus is making sure that solar is addressed, but the DPU would have the authority to add other types of companies that operate in that space. Because anytime you're having an interaction with an end use retail customer, residential customer, you want to make sure that they're being presented with information that's factual and accurate and they're not getting taken advantage of. So I think not a lot of attention's been paid to that that aspect of it, but it is an important thing.
And you said that was in the House.
It's in the House bill.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll point you to the sections on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that would be that's where you go.
I do have a question also.
Oh, sorry, we can't see you because of
It's Paula, let me show all participants. She doesn't have her camera on, I believe.
It's okay, yeah. Do you want to ask Paula and then we'll go to Lydia?
Yeah, thank you so much. So my question is in the context of affordability and the timing, because I hear and I've seen that there is interest in fusion and advanced nuclear as well. To my knowledge, there is nothing that is commercially available. So, and to my knowledge also is very expensive. So what was the thinking of the administration around when nuclear is going to be something that is these new nuclear advanced reactors or when fusion is available? What's the timing that you have in mind and what are your thoughts about the cost?
Yeah. So there have been a couple advanced nuclear reactors designs approved and licensed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And there are a couple projects that are underway. I believe projects are being constructed in Ontario. I think Wyoming, I'm pretty sure, has a project that's under construction. And Tennessee, the Tennessee Valley Authority is looking at this. So there are a few examples of this. It is still earlier stage. I don't have my fingertips information on the cost, like the unit cost of energy from those. But those would be regulated under cost of service utility. Like they have regulatory structures that they would have to demonstrate that. So we could find out what that is. I will say, with respect to cost, I think a lot of people highlight the Vogtle plant down in Georgia, which is the newest light water reactor. We're not necessarily talking about traditional light water reactors when we talk about nuclear, but looking at that as a point of comparison, the unit cost of energy, people will say it was exorbitant and way over the original cost. It's still at cost parity or cheaper than a lot of the clean energy sources that we're looking at right now. It's about the same price, if not cheaper. So I do think there's a possibility there. And so we're not committing to building a nuclear power plant today, right? There's a lot of steps that have to happen between now and that happening. And you're a decade or more out before anything like that would be coming to the region, I think. But we want to at least start that conversation and discuss what would the possibilities be? What would that look like? How might that be achieved? What are the strengths and weaknesses of Massachusetts as a region with respect to looking at nuclear? And really just keep it in the mix of potential options for us, because we just don't want to take it off the table. There's been some studies done by ISA New England where they showed even just a few gigawatts of nuclear could avoid the need for more than 10 to 15 gigawatts of other types of power generation. That's a lot of land use siting fights that we can avoid. That's a lot of transmission infrastructure that you might be able to avoid building. And so there could be some value to having some strategically placed nuclear, and we just want to explore that and see what that might look like.
Thank you. Can I follow up with some information on that ISO New England study, because the assumptions are something that at least I would love to share with you some concerns that we have about the assumptions that were made and that New England study, ISO New England study. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we can definitely follow up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Lydia, did you have your last question, or?
That's okay, let's go on.
All right, great. Thank you, Undersecretary Judge. And now we're going to move on to the second piece of the agenda, or the second presentation, which is on microgrids and community energy resilience. So we're joined by two of my colleagues, Saina Mashmasarmi, Environmental Justice Program Manager, and Oleander Stone, Director of Climate Engagement and Partnership, and they will both be presenting. And the discussion will cover microgrids in practice, microgrid deployment, community and municipal interest in microgrids, and upcoming engagement opportunities. Welcome, Oleander and Saina.
Hello, everyone. As Undersecretary Power mentioned, my name is Saina Mashmasarmi, and I am working on this piece of the executive order with my colleague Oleander Stone, who will be joining me later. If we could go to the next slide.
Sorry about that. They're trying to advance the slides and it may be frozen.
No worries. Well, to start, while we're waiting for the slide to change. To follow up on my colleague Undersecretary Judge's presentation, this work is part of the executive order that he provided an overview for. And so one of the provisions within the executive order, specifically provision number 6, directed the Office of Environmental Justice and Equity within EEA to evaluate opportunities to expand the use of microgrids and other models of clean energy resilience as a tool to strengthen both energy reliability within the Commonwealth and resilience, particularly for critical facilities and communities that may be vulnerable to power outages or grid disruptions. And so in the face of increasing climate risks, we see microgrids as not just energy infrastructure, but also a means for community energy resilience infrastructure. And so to complete this work, or as we've started to operationalize what this executive order is tasking our office with, we have convened a working group in coordination with the Department of Energy Resources, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, or MVP, and the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, which all have played a role either through grant programs or technical assistance in helping communities, municipalities, and private entities pursue microgrid development within their communities. Any luck with the slides? No worries.
Still sharing slides and it's frozen on her end. She's trying to give me permission to share.
Gotcha, no worries. So to start with a sort of an overview of what a microgrid is. So a microgrid is a localized energy system that can operate while connected to the larger electric grid or run independently during an outage, which is commonly known as operating in island mode. And so a microgrid can take on a variety of different configurations, but it typically includes a combination of local energy electricity generation, so thinking about the installation of solar panels, a battery or other type of energy storage system that's able to store the electricity or energy generated at the facility, and then control technologies that can manage the electricity supply and demand, as well as the critical facilities or the buildings that would then be served by the energy system. And so microgrids can help maintain power to essential services such as hospitals, emergency shelters, schools, public safety facilities, and community services during grid disruptions. And so there are about 4 different types of conditions that a microgrid can operate, or that sort of determine how a microgrid can operate during electrical outages. And we can go to the next slide. So in blue sky conditions, this is sort of when everything is working perfectly and the optimal conditions. And so the microgrid is running parallel to the grid. It is generating, sending, storing, receiving, and buying energy or electricity. In gray sky conditions, there is some sort of grid disruption, and in that situation, the microgrid would detect that there's some sort of trouble, and it would switch to island mode, where it would disconnect from the grid. And in black sky conditions, when the microgrid enters island mode, then the power that is generated and stored will be utilized by the site. And depending on the system setup, all the core functions will be maintained, or either the core functions will be maintained while under black sky conditions. And it will stay in island mode until the microgrid can safely reconnect to the regional grid and we return to blue sky conditions. So it's sort of a circular cycle. Next slide. So the Commonwealth's work on microgrids is not new. There have been many reports and studies and workshops that have been convened and conducted over the past over 10 years. And these reports have explored the different technical and regulatory aspects of microgrid deployment, as well as some of the benefits and barriers. And so the working group that we've convened has reviewed them all. Some were involved in the creation of some of these reports. And so, my colleague Leander will start to talk more specifically about some of the barriers that are still accurate. And while a lot of these reports have incorporated some form of community engagement, we want to do some more extensive outreach. And if we were to think about microgrid deployment as a three-legged stool, the reports and the analysis to date have done an excellent job on the regulatory and technological front, but our work here is to build out the third leg of equity and engagement and take the information of the prior reports and contextualize them and ground truth them in and with communities, meaning in this situation, both municipal governments and environmental justice organizations and communities. And so I'll turn it over to my colleague Oleander to get into some more of the details.
Thank you, Saina.
Next slide, please. Hello, everybody. My name is Oleander Stone. I'm the Director of Climate Engagement and Partnerships at EEA, working with Maria Belen, Mike Judge, and Saina Mashmasarmi. So as Saina mentioned, there has been a tremendous amount of work that's been done on microgrids, and the challenges that we are currently seeing now have been well documented in those studies. These challenges include the regulatory and utility barriers. There's lots of questions about the right of way and obligations to service the facilities within a microgrid area. There's questions and challenges around interconnection and technical capacity, and the idea that to get interconnected takes a lot of time, and that there's no standardized implementation pathway. So meaning that each project is starting at the beginning, and they're really having to try to figure out a number of things on their own. Another challenge is the economic and technological constraints. The storage and infrastructure costs are very high. The island mode duration is a question, how long a battery can last. And some of the documentation about the economics of a given project are still unknowns. Then the project delivery and capacity gaps. There's limited funding and resources for technical assistance. There's long timelines, which can lead to both project leadership fatigue, but as we see in many infrastructure projects, it also can result in changes of cost. And then there's a lack of sustained funding mechanisms for the build out of these projects. Next slide, please. As Saina mentioned, that we are working on really trying to do a number of engagement and have conversations on microgrids with different types of communities. And thank you to those of you who came on our site visit earlier today to go and hear from some communities on what their experience has been with microgrids. There is quite a bit of interest in microgrids from many different types of communities, and we hear about this interest. In particular, there are a number of communities when they come into the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program and they do their first pass at understanding what is resilience and how do they make their community more resilient. They're very quick to see the way that a microgrid could meet many of their resiliency needs. And so they get very, very excited about these projects, but then there isn't a lot of pursuit to implement these projects because of the challenges that we listed before. But one of the places that we're also really trying to think about is critical facilities and some of the opportunities to build more resilient infrastructure for these critical facilities. These examples could include hospitals, schools, police stations, fire headquarters, town hall, emergency shelters, community centers, health centers. But one of the things that we also see quite a bit, particularly in rural communities, is that what are our community centers may look different. What is a critical facility can be different based on the community, because not every community has a hospital or a school in it. And it may be that it is a grocery store or a general store, farm that could be seen as a critical facility. We've also been hearing that there is a lot of interest in the ways that microgrids can be saving money for municipal budgets during this very complex time for municipal budgets. Some of you, those who came to the site visit, we heard from our friends in Orange a little bit about their project at their elementary school. And one of the things that Bruce did not talk about is how as they started seeing some energy savings coming in through that project, the school committee felt confident enough to hire a new teacher. And in a time, while it's like one teacher, how does that really relate to really large metrics? It may not seem like a very big deal. It can in a very small community. And even so that the school committee felt confident enough that they could hire a teacher was a really big thing for them. So there's also the idea that microgrids can provide backup power in when the grid goes down, which since we're here in the West in particular, the power goes out quite a bit in the West. So just to name that. Next slide, please. So to date, we have talked to a number of different people, we meaning both Saina and I, but also this work group that we have internally at EEA. We've gone to speak with the Community Climate Advisory Council. We've spoken with the EJ Community Engagement and Outreach Working Group, along with the Clean Energy Equity Coalition. And some of the feedback that we've heard is that many different entities, from municipal staff to EJ organizations, RPAs from many different geographies, are interested in microgrids. And I think that is not to be that is an important thing, that this is a topic that across geographies, across community types, people want to talk about, and they want to understand how these projects can work in their community. People want clarification on how to move these projects forward. They would like the barriers to be addressed. They would like to feel empowered that these are projects that they could make happen in their communities. And there's a renewed interest in legislative language on the microgrids. Next slide, please. We have some upcoming engagement opportunities that we are working on. We are hoping to do some stakeholder interviews. We are actively planning a half-day workshop to happen in July, where we would invite people from all across Massachusetts to come and talk about these different projects and also to learn about different resources that are available. We're trying to conduct some site visits across the state, one of which happened today, of going to Shutesbury and Leverett. And we're also putting out a survey to try to capture the universe of interest of projects that are happening across the state. Next slide, please. Oh, so we're happy to take any questions from you all. If you could go one more slide forward, we also have questions for you all, for you to consider of things that we're trying to, as we're trying to collect more information, is if you know about any projects that have considered microgrids that should be on our radar. If you have ever thought about building a microgrid, and also how in your community you're thinking about energy resilience. And from your perspective, are there critical facilities that a microgrid could support for your community? So those are some of the things, the questions that we're going to be asking different folks as we're out and about. So if you have questions, we'd like to respond to one of those questions, or have questions for us, we're happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Oleander.
You're welcome.
Saina. Do we have questions either in person or online? In person, Sophia?
Thanks. One of the themes that came up this afternoon was around funding. I'm just curious, particularly in light of the federal situation with the loss of the Inflation Reduction Act money and the budget constraints that everyone is under. There was talk about grants and some of the issues with financing, but are there resources that you have or can point people to if that's the question that they have?
Would you like to go first? I think that right now we don't have a singular grant source. You know, the folks who we spoke with today have been making a patchwork out of it. It's like between Mass CEC, the Green Communities, MVP, and so it requires a certain level of sophistication of moving through grant systems. So that's definitely an area that as we think about how to, if we were to create some sort of recommendations for the future of having a simple understanding of how to access funds and supports.
Just one quick follow-up thought is, one of the innovative things from the energy bill, the climate bill, now almost 2 years ago, was the support fund for DPU, but that I'm just thinking about the need for technical assistance, not just for communities, but and like EJ or community organizations, but for places where those don't exist, or like the organizations don't exist, to be able to help groups and entities access resources. And if that's something that's not just on this, it's sort of more general, if that's something that OJ was thinking about as we're asking both municipalities and groups.
Excuse me, could you please speak into the microphone?
Sorry. Just if there's thinking about like a hub, I guess, for support for both municipalities or communities and community groups and organizations that may not have the connections or the knowledge to access grants or financing themselves.
Yeah. Well, Maria Belen, I don't know if you want to answer on behalf of the EJ office.
Yeah, it's definitely the area of capacity of the communities that don't have those organizations. Definitely something worth thinking about. The EJ grant program was created to provide capacity. Obviously, it's not to the level where it would fund a project like this. But it's definitely good for us to keep in mind as we're thinking through all the grant programs that EEA has. I don't know, Mike, if you have anything.
Yeah, I mean, Mass CEC has provided technical assistance and done feasibility studies in the past. I mean, that could be something that you could do going forward. Sorry, I should like behind it. So that, yeah, I mean, I do think it's a good point. I mean, I don't know if if some of this is going through maybe NP, I don't know if there's a possibility of technical assistance and grants sort of being paired through there. Another thing, it is sort of a patchwork of programs because there are like some of the components of a microgrid. If you had a battery and solar, that might be funded through the SMART program in part, or net metering. And so there's probably some work to be done in helping people sort of see what the value stack is and all the different revenue streams that are available. But that's,
I guess just from the external stakeholder perspective, having to do that patchwork and figure all of that out is in and of itself a barrier. But one of the themes that was raised this afternoon just was the like there's no one place to go for waste. That's the way that it's structured.
Excuse me, could you please speak into the microphone?
To the extent that we can break down the silos, I guess that's what I'm asking for.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lydia.
So I know that this afternoon I was mentioning that one of the big obstacles we faced in trying to implement kind of a virtual microgrid project in Boston, Chinatown, is regulations imposed by Eversource on the downtown area network. And we've heard from other communities and other cities that face similar regulatory issues. So I'm just wondering, what's the pathway for advocacy or affecting those regulations?
Yeah, so the area network issue is that is a bit of a specific thing for certain types of networks that are structured a particular way. That one might be a little bit of a harder one to address, just to be frank. But one of the things that so in the governor's affordability bill, there's a couple sections, but there's one main one that would add a new section to chapter 164 that would direct the utilities to propose a tariff that would clarify the regulatory treatment of a multi-user microgrid. So if you have one customer, you can create a single-use user microgrid because that customer is not crossing the road. They're not, they're not infringing on the utility's exclusive service franchise rights, and so that's part of the issue. But if you can clarify who's operating the equipment when the grid is down and when it's not down, this is a solvable problem. It's just that the utilities aren't going to do it on their own. Most likely, they're not motivated to file something before the department. So I think if you direct them to do that, that would create the proceeding where you can figure out how to address those regulatory barriers and then establish a set of rules that is applicable to anyone who wants to do this. And so we open the door back, we propose to at least with the governor's bill to allow for communities to do this at their election with facilities, so that it's not just any customer, because I think the utilities have been really concerned about that. But let's try this out, figure out how it works, break down some barriers. So we know there are customers that are interested in doing this. That may not solve the area network problem, specific to like downtown the environments, but it sort of break down the barriers that exist.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. We're having trouble hearing you online. Were any audio levels adjusted?
Oh, so no, just lean over. I'm sorry. Yeah, at any rate, that piece of the governor's legislation was not included in the House Energy Affordability Bill. We're hopeful it will reemerge in the Senate Affordability Bill.
Thank you. There's a hand online, Peter, and then
Yes.
and then Cheryl.
So thank you. I have a lot of questions, but I have about 3 questions and a comment actually responding to the question if we know of any potential sites in our community. So I might be able to help there. But the first one is around pathways. So, Secretary Judge, you talked a little bit about the disparate pieces that come together. And my question is fundamentally, is there a plan towards putting together like a standardized playbook for things like site screening, interconnection templates, like what the financing stack would look like, so that each group is not having to start from scratch? Is that something that already exists?
For microgrids specifically, there is not currently a playbook. There are different feasibility studies that were funded by Mass CC that looked at various components that sort of speak to like site constraints and different constraints of whether the project could be completed or as designed or was feasible with that on that specific site. But as far as plans to develop a playbook, not currently at the moment, but that is something that could be considered as part of the work that we're doing if that's a need that's identified in conversations. But if you have anything to
say the same thing, I think that it would not be difficult for us to kind of pull together the different resources and identify that, I think, but it hasn't been done yet.
Okay. And the next question I had was who would technically own the assets under some of these models? Who owns the assets underlying the microgrids? The community, the municipal township, or where does that go?
Could be the utility company providing it as a service. I think there's been different models in other jurisdictions. One of the most notable models is Bronzeville community in Chicago. So it's a microgrid. that they've built, and they created a whole structure and demonstration and rules for it. I don't know if it's entirely replicable here or not, but there have been jurisdictions that have figured out how to do this, and you can either have the customer own it or the utility do it and provide a service to that customer. And I think that's what we would be trying to accomplish if the legislation that we propose moves forward in front of the DPU, is identify the rules of the road, who owns it, operates it, controls it, and is responsible for what in different conditions.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And then last comment: is there, from a state perspective, is there an aspirational number of how many sites will be deployed by a set date? Is there like a target in mind of what the state wants to accomplish by a period?
The short answer is no, that we don't have a target for how many sites or how many projects we want deployed by any certain date for micro in particular.
Gotcha. Cool.
So I know nothing about microgrids. So they're tied to a place, but is it a specific size? Is something too big or something too small?
So the size and configuration really differ depending on the specific project and facility. And so there are similar components across projects, but like what it exactly looks like, there is no set standard.
But maybe you could give an example. It could be like a battery that's connected to solar. And then you connect buildings together so that one can generate.
I mean, what about like population density? That has to be like in a city? Can it be in a rural?
So the site
more often in a rural area, probably.
So the site we visited today was the Shutesbury Public Library, and it's not totally a microgrid, but that was their original aspiration for the site. And it's a public library. I don't know the square footage off the top of my head, but it wasn't
5,000 square feet, just under.
Just under 5.
Just under.
Great, thank you, everyone. Under 5,000 square feet, and they had solar panels installed on the roof, as well as a site where they were in the future were able to, and it wasn't very large either, but were able to have battery storage installed, and that was or would be considered a microgrid once the solar panels connected to the battery storage that they may be able to install in the future. If that answers your question.
I have one more question though. Oh, one more question.
So I
Go
have
ahead.
one thing to the explanation, which is that when you then connect it to a second building, that if you have if you're then sharing your energy between the library and the town hall, and if they cross a road, if they're across the street from each other, that is when you're crossing the right of way. And that is where some of the challenges come in, is that you can't tie in those two buildings together if the solar panels and battery are on one side of the road. So
Because the reason for that is because you become a public utility and you'd be required to be regulated by the Department of Public Utilities and have cost of service rates regulation. So because they have exclusive monopoly rights, like no one else is allowed to distribute in their service territory, which is why we need to establish rules for when you can do that. Because you can do it technically, it's just a legal constraint. One other just example of a microgrid, just to give you a sense of like different scale, the entire Longwood Medical area in Boston is a microgrid. And it is operated by NG. They own a 50 megawatt gas power plant there that services that area. It is completely able to be islanded from the entire rest of the Boston electric grid. And it also provides the heat. They capture the heat from that facility and then distribute it into the building. So that's sort of a legacy thing. It's actually carved out specifically in a number of state laws because it's like this legacy facility that predates a lot of these things. So that's an unusual situation, but just to give you a sense of like how big the scale can be, it could be a small solar array and a small battery for a single building, or it could be a power plant that's serving an entire campus situation. So there is a big range of scale that could happen here.
So the thing about the monopoly, aren't you the government? I mean, can't you just?
Well, that's, well, but you need to change in the law. Yeah, you need to change the statute.
It would need legislation.
Yeah. Which is why we've asked for it, right?
So it took us decades just to get another internet.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so we are trying to do that, but it also, there is a concern, and like, I'm just kind of saying what the utility might say. If you just let any customer cross the road with any piece of equipment, then you have wires running all over the place, and who's responsible for maintaining that, maintaining service quality, safety? So I think that's where some of the questions come into play, and you just want to make sure that there's clear rules.
Okay, thank you.
I have one last comment very quickly.
Go for it.
So I think this is really in response to the question that's up here, the critical facilities. There's one that I'm thinking about right now, and based on Secretary Judge's last comment, I think perhaps it might be a candidate. So there's Advocates, which is an organization that serves both Eastern and Central Mass, has over 100 sites within Massachusetts. And if technically a site could be considered a microgrid, I think I may have some ideas to connect you and that group, if that's something that would be useful to you, to at least have a conversation about that. But that feels like perhaps an opportunity there.
Yes, we would love to be put in contact with them, and we can reach out to you offline.
Okay.
To an introduction.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else? Yes.
I just have been thinking about how these opportunities for a template or some type of framework that could be offered to communities, and I want to uplift this incredible program that my business has been able to be a part of, which is the Mass CEC and UMass Extension are running. It's a clean energy cohort for the arts and culture sector. And there are a number of us, specifically in Western Mass, that are involved with this right now. And I was just looking at, this incredible file of information that I have where, through the technical assistance that they have and the advisors of this team, they have done this whole assessment for each individual business and organization. They've put together a whole utility bill overview, energy analysis. They've provided this huge opportunity matrix. They help to frame and reframe core values and priorities of my business. They have provided a whole list of just recently of funding and financing for clean energy and climate justice, specifically in the arts and culture sector, and are creating these readiness pathways. So it's not necessarily a specific grant per se, but I will say that in the time that I have been involved in this cohort, have been able to immediately jump into grants that I never ever could have considered before, because there is language that I have, because there is framework that has been presented. It's not taking anything away from what I'm already doing. It's just giving me language and accessibility, and it's fundamentally changing my business and therefore my community. And so I just would like to uplift that as a model.
Thank you. That's really great. Thanks for sharing.
Yes, you're welcome.
Peter, is that a legacy hand? Okay, good. Anyone else? Otherwise, thank you, Melinda and Saina and Mike. So now we're going to move to public comment. Please raise your hand virtually or use the Q&A feature. And just a reminder to please keep your comments to a maximum of 2 minutes. Are there any online?
No one online has their hand raised, but there are a few comments in the Q&A box.
Sure. Do you want to read them?
Sure.
Thank you.
Candia Flynn said, what is being done to be sure that all Nipmuc voices are included in the EEA discussions? The Nipmuc Nation Hassana Misko tribe has not been included in the conversations. representation matters. Currently, many NIPMUP voices are not represented, and this needs to be rectified by the state. We are recognized under Executive Order 126 and also NCAI. Thank you. Signed, Candia Flynn, Vice Chairperson, NN, which I believe is NIPMUP Nation, Hassanamisko Tribe.
Thank you so much. I can definitely reach out and talk through environmental justice tribal EJ strategy and the work that we're doing, but would love to connect with you one-on-one. So I'll reach out.
Great. And then we have a couple comments from Sari Kayali. What value does the utility ownership bring to geothermal as opposed to other financing methods? Wouldn't it make more sense for the individual customer to take out a long-term loan with an equity like a green bank or own the equipment as opposed to third-party ownership? They also said, having worked on a community microgrid project in Chelsea, the interconnection review period was one of the most difficult hurdles that was largely the result of bureaucratic inefficiencies on the part of the utility. Is there a pathway to mandating utilities to improve their interconnection process?
Yes, thank you. So Mike, I don't know if you want to answer some, but probably executive order.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, we're constantly trying to improve the interconnection process, and there's a number of different proceedings underway right now. The utilities are subject to timeline enforcement mechanisms. If they don't meet their timelines, then they can be subject to financial penalties that come right out of their shareholder pockets. So there's definitely a lot of work to try to make the interconnection process more efficient. With respect to the utility ownership of geothermal, the utility has a bit of a unique ability in some respects. Getting a loan that is the same length of time as the life of a geothermal system, a 50-year or 100-year system, that is not necessarily something that someone can just walk into a bank and get. But the utilities, by virtue of their sort of kind of unique status as regulated monopolies, they can amortize investments and do over that amount of time. Just last week, we just approved an upgrade to a transmission line that is over 100 years old, and literally the equipment is over 100 years old. So the ability to finance projects over that length of time allows them to deliver financing at a cost to customers that is potentially much lower than what a bank might be able to do or a traditional financial institution might be able to do. And so that was part of the thought process there, is getting them involved in that space. It also gives the gas companies a potential off-ramp from gas. So we're currently asking the gas companies to put themselves out of business, and that does create some tension, as you may suspect. And so if there's other pathways for them to continue providing service to customers, that may be able to make the transition a little easier. So that's just some of the thinking. I mean, I completely hear you on other financing options, and what we're seeing is that it's immensely difficult and that there's not a lot of other financing options that are emerging. So we're trying to try this out and see if this is a viable pathway to get more stuff built.
Great, thank you. Kessler, were there any other written comments?
There were a few additional written comments. I can go through very quickly.
Sure.
David Dow says the World Climate Research Center uses connections to the groundwater to heat in the winter and cool in the summer. The senior assisted living facility where I reside uses an emergency generator during power outages. Sorry about that. And Paulo Garcia provided a resource in the chat, which we can give you access to after the meeting. We have a comment from Richard Nathols, who said, you should point out that towns can establish municipal lighting plants and become public utilities and cross the road and the other utilities line. And I believe that is it.
Great, Thank you so much, everyone. So now we are moving to our next meeting. We're tentatively planning for the next EJ Council meeting to be in Stockbridge. And the specific location is yet to be determined. Tell me.
That's nearby. It's in my neighborhood.
Love it. Things for lunch.
Probably the town hall, yes. Probably at the town hall.
And the next one will be on August 13th. Please remember there's a evaluation question at the end of the Zoom. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? So I'll request Sophia to do a roll call to go to adjourn.
Yes, Kalila Barnett. Madeline Frazier Cook. Melissa Harding Ferretti.
Yes.
Cheryl Hawley.
Yes.
Caroline Hahn. Lydia Lowe.
Yes.
Marcos Luna. Peter Matthey.
Yes.
Sophia Owen.
Yes.
Jen Salonetti.
Yes.
Patricia Spence. Miles Gresham. Harleen Marois.
Yes.
And Paula Garcia. Maria Belen Power.
Yes. Great. Thanks, everyone. And the time is 8:11. Thanks, everyone. The meeting is adjourned.